Okay, so everybody makes fun of me for having that record button there, but it does remind me to record. So thank you guys for being here at the June 3rd roundtable session. Like I was saying just a second ago, this has been one of the most successful and beneficial things to come out of the COVID situation that we were in as far as meeting virtual. And members have really taken to it. And it's all because of you and your input and the way that you teach each other during these sessions is the reason it's been so super successful. Again, we are recording this, and all of the Zoom-based sessions that are hosted by CTAT, most of the time are posted on a media platform such as YouTube. Just like this one will be posted on the CTAT YouTube channel. If you do not wish to have your picture displayed to public view, you can still participate, just turn your video off. Otherwise, your participation serves as consent to your picture via Zoom frame being posted to media platforms such as YouTube. So again, welcome. And today's session is all breaking news about the legislative update. And so the best person in the state to tell you about that is Robin, and here she is.
I don't know. I think during this last session, Mark, you've been as much of a spiritual advisor, and I really needed that. So May 31st was the last day of session. And wow, what a crazy session it was. We call it sine die. That's the formal Latin name for it. And that basically means that the meeting has been recessed until further notice. So one of the things that we've been asked is, will there be at least one special session? And the answer is yes. We think that special session will occur in the fall. That is up to the governor to set the date and what is covered, so he can keep as tight an agenda on the kinds of bills that can be introduced during a special session. So it's really up to the governor. So this fall, we think they will take up two main items, at least that we know of for now, and that is redistricting and election integrity. So with that, that's all? I mean, that's all, folks. That's it. We've recessed now. We get to take a break and see what passed. Like, how did they do? So everybody gets a grade. Everybody gets a scorecard in public education, right? And so the Texas legislature, there's no exception for them. So let's look at how they did. Domain 1 of their accountability. Number of bills filed, almost 10,000 bills this session. And that's actually a higher number than previous sessions, which is interesting considering COVID and snowpocalypse and everything else that has happened. So just under 10,000 bills filed, about 3,500 have passed both the House and the Senate. Of course, the governor can either sign them, not sign them and let them become law, or veto them. So their EOS, which is their end of session average, is about 35% of bills. So they get a score of 35, which is okay, really, in our book, because the system is designed to kind of stop bills that are bad or frivolous from proceeding. Clearly, this happens every session. More bills are filed than passed. So that's how it worked out. All right, so let's look at the big bill here. So House Bill 1525, it was consistently called the cleanup bill for House Bill 3, focused on public school finance. So immediately, I'm thinking about Mark and his love of all shows and music from the 70s. So I'll follow along, and I'm thinking of the cleaning lady from the Carol Burnett show. And this bill was supposed to be all about cleaning up, but it really wasn't. It really showcased. It went a little bit more like when Eunice and Mama would get into it on the show. And I can't think of a better analogy than how the House and the Senate struggled with 1525. The bill was nearly gutted when it went to the Senate and replaced with the Senate's provisions. And so the bill, of course, had to go to conference committee so both chambers could confer and decide what was going to happen ultimately. So the fiscal note for this year's public school finance bill, at least the state's portion, is 475 million and change. And so this cleanup bill, it did a couple things. It brought back the 240 million adjustment for small and mid-sized districts. And we've got a slide to kind of show what it was before and what it is now. It brings back 200 million in a special allotment for GT that was removed last session. adjusts the fast growth allotment, gives the schools transition grants that they need, and extends the grant program currently serving students with autism and dyslexia. And of course, what was new, not necessarily a cleanup, but is the tiered funding framework for CTE. Okay, so we have some federal dollars, and the Texas legislature decided to spell out how those dollars are going to be used for public education. So it's over 1 billion, and I just wanted to highlight the first, actually the second bullet in there too, because this is new money for P-TECH and innovative academies. And I know many of you are in school districts where you've received a designation for at least one, if not more, campuses. As P-TECH or innovative academies. So there are 118 million in federal funds earmarked just for P-TECH. And so at this point, it's too early for us to know whether or not those funds can be provided for continuing operation of those designated schools, or if that is just for startup money. So that is a question yet to be answered. And so they've set aside 100 million for the supplemental instructional supports, including tutoring. And then you see the math doesn't quite match up. See the number at the top, just over $1 billion in federal aid. And then they've commingled it in the budget rider with state funds. So it's really hard to flesh out what's designated for what, but they have listed out in the budget rider just over 1.3 billion for COVID-19 acceleration supports. So I think that all of the state money, they're designating how it can be spent. And that money is really going to flow to schools similar to Title I funds. So the socioeconomically disadvantaged schools will get a larger portion of funds, and it can be spent on the items listed in the bullets. And this is all to try and help recover a lot of the instructional gains that are not made during COVID, to bring students back to where they should be. And so then, of course, related to CTE is our new funding framework. And the agency swears, cross heart, hope to die, that no district should experience a cut of any significance by switching to this framework. So this remains to be seen, and certainly want to hear from you as they start to flow funds based on this new framework. But basically, I know a lot of you have seen this before. Of course, it's only for courses that are at least the lowest tier 1.10 is for those courses not assigned to a program study. They still get a weight. It's not as much as it was, but they do still get a weight. And then of course, for tiers 2 and 3, those are only courses that are included in a state approved program study. We've gotten the question before whether or not that includes regional programs of study. And we have received the answer that yes, it does. So the bill also specifies that the list of courses by tier, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes, must be published annually so that you know what's included. Mark had noticed there were some courses that we would consider advanced that were assigned tier 1 status that would receive the lowest weight. And so we're going to try and work with the agency to see if we can get those courses designated as tier 3. So I'll turn it back over to you, Mark, for the next couple of slides.
Okay, when we first started looking at the different tiers and funding levels, we put together this spreadsheet. But originally, our template spreadsheet only accounted for courses that were in a program of study. So we just compared apples to apples. We compared what a course in a program of study at level 1, 2, 3, and 4 would earn or generate in revenue versus on the old 1.35 model versus what they would generate on the new tier model funding. Well, now that it's very close to basically a done deal, we've come in and we've added to our spreadsheet those courses not in a program of study. And so what you will be able to do is everyone that's registered for this, I will send out an email that has links to these Google sheets. And so you can take these Google sheets and enter your numbers, and you can see what your funding will generate at 1.35. And you can also see what it's going to look at the variable ways. But this is one of these things, guys, to where this is already pretty much a done deal. So when you look at the 1.35 funding, it's just going to be for good old memory's sake. It's not going to mean a whole lot anymore. However, there is a new project that we started this week. If we can get that moving. And this is going to be our new spreadsheet that we'll send out to members as soon as it's completed. And it just takes a ton of time because now instead of just doing all the students, the best way I think to do it is to do it by course. And you can see what we've done here. I've got one cluster completely done, agricultural science, because alphabetically, of course, it starts the first and by service ID code. But you can see that this spreadsheet will have the service ID code, the course names, the credits, the typical V code that you will put in your student information management system, the course tier, and then you can see the beauty of this spreadsheet is that when you put your enrollment in, it will figure the FTEs per course and then the revenue per course. And so different, like a tier 2 course is going to be 1.28 in that formula, whereas a tier 3 course is going to be 1.47 in the same formula. So when this gets done, hopefully this will be done by the time we get to conference. And so if you have any questions, we can do it. But you know, it just takes a long time with that many courses from that many career clusters. One career cluster's down, 13 to go. So it's once you get going, you can work pretty quick on it, and it's not too bad. But hopefully this will be something that members can use. And I think the best thing about these spreadsheets is you can do what if scenarios. What if we had 100 students in livestock production as opposed to principles of agriculture? You know, how does that change? So I love those what if scenarios, and I think that the spreadsheets are the best way to make best use of them. Oh, a lot of people asked if Jordan and I went to the annual Brookhaven Country Club deal, and so I thought I'd send you this picture of Jordan and I together. A lot of people say we look alike, but I don't know. You judge for yourself. Okay, Robin, back to you.
Oh, you'll have to help me with this one, Mark. So it probably took us several weeks to try and figure out the small and mid-size adjustment. I don't know that we're still all the way clear on it, but we'll try. Mark swears that probably nobody was even paying attention to this. And really, it affects school districts that have fewer than 1,600 students that are considered small, and those with 5,000 or fewer, 1,600 to 5,000, which are considered mid-sized. So this small and mid-sized adjustment went away in House Bill 3 last session. And so the smaller schools got up in arms this last year because they noticed that if they received the small and mid-sized allotment, then their basic allotment amount was 0, right? And the CTE multiplier was times the number of 0. Basic allotment of 0 times CTE weight equals 0. And so they weren't getting any additional funds for CTE. So of course they identified this as an issue. Now the schools that were getting the basic allotment rather than the small and mid-size adjustment, they were generating the CTE weight, but this is so confusing and everybody wanted it to be fixed. Because even as Mark pointed out, you can see it in the summary of finance, but we call that a false positive, almost like fake news. You really have to dig in and see whether or not this school was receiving the basic allotment or a small and mid-sized allotment. And so they fixed all that now. So HB 1525 reinstated the adjustment like it was. So it took it back to its former version. And so now it'll be pretty clear in the summary of finance, that'll be a true representation of the CTE funds that the districts are getting of this size. So I'll pause and see if anybody has any questions, or Mark, if I've missed anything. Okay, so back one more, there we go. Okay, so the bills related to CTE. Of course, there were probably 2 times as many bills related to CTE, maybe 3 times as many than are reflected on this slide right here. So there were several that weren't super significant necessarily that didn't pass, just a few, but these are the ones that did pass. And so most notably, HB 773, which adds a performance indicator for students that complete a state approved program study. And so this was one of the #1 policy priorities designated by CTAT's board of directors heading into the session. And so we're super proud of everybody that has helped us get this bill passed. And so I guess the best news of all is, even though we had some resistance from the agency, the governor actually signed this bill. He didn't just not sign it and let it become effective. He actually signed it. And so that's a really positive thing for us. And so it becomes effective September 1. What we don't know yet is whether or not this year's graduates, 2021, are going to, whether this indicator will count for them. So that remains to be seen. We can't answer that question yet. And so then House Bill 1247 directs the tri-agency to develop a strategic framework for work-based learning. This is due by next December, so they have quite some time to work on it. I've seen a strategic framework, just kind of one slide available from the agency, but I think the intent with this bill is get a group together to really roll up their sleeves and find out what kind of supports are needed in the field. So this bill doesn't develop any sort of advisory council. It really directs the tri-agency to do this work. But if there are opportunities to have individuals serve in advisory capacities, or if they're just asking for blanket feedback, please be ready, because they need to hear from the field. What do you have in place now? What's working? What's not? What would make it better? So be on the lookout for some outreach for that bill. And then HB 3767. Similarly, it directs the tri-agency to coordinate. I just love these words when they put them in bills: coordinate and optimize. But they're really wanting the tri-agency commission really to align career education and training firms to workforce demand. This is not new. These are efforts that really the tri-agency has been trying to achieve since the beginning. This is why it was formed. And so I guess the lawmakers are saying, don't stop now, keep working, we can do better. Obviously, we've made great strides in CTE with our state's response to Perkins 5 and implementing programs of study. We have a new way to really evaluate apples to apples data on performance indicators for students that take CTE across the state. So that's a huge step forward. So we'll see what comes out of this commission, and hopefully they'll reach out to the field for input and feedback. HB 3938. So, you know, IBCs have kind of been a sore spot for CTE for the last couple of years. And this bill is expanding oversight, really. It's taking the responsibility for developing and revising the IBC list to a commission rather than TEA, the Workforce Commission, and Higher Education Coordinating Board. And so it develops an advisory council. Now, these members are going to be appointed. And if you'll notice, there are 3 representatives. There will be 3 people representing industry, 3 CTE teachers or administrators or combination, and 3 people representing community colleges. So that's 9 folks serving on this commission. So if you notice, we have an opportunity to at least have 3 folks, 3 of our CTAT folks, help with this advisory council. So if this is something that you're interested in, please do reach out and let us know, because there's going to be an opportunity coming up. The terms for this commission, every member will serve a 4-year term. They're going to be staggered. So of course, by lottery draw, when the council is first established, we'll determine which people roll off first. So anyway, it's a 4-year commitment after it gets started. So the list has to be updated annually. This group has to come up with a rubric for determining the IBCs that are on the list, method for evaluating those, and updating it annually. So it's an opportunity for us coming up to expand that list. Okay, so what didn't pass, and I noticed I forgot to put one in here. So we had the HCR 85, which was the House Committee resolution to establish CTE signing day. It ran out of time at the very end of session and unfortunately did not meet the deadline. There's a bit of a backstory there. We can share maybe after the recorded session is over, but unfortunately that one did not quite make it across the finish line. And that's not to say that we can't bring it back. So that's the point of this slide, is looking forward. What does our crystal ball tell us we're going to see next session? So like I mentioned, there were several bills filed on CTE, but the most significant that we were tracking that would have really shaken things up are the two that are listed here. And they almost made it to passage. They passed the full House. They passed at least almost all the way in the Senate. They passed out of the Senate Education Committee and were this close to being set for, actually one of them was set for the Senate chamber, 2554, but was not heard by the deadline. So HB 2554 would have established a vocational diploma. Now, the bill that was filed initially in the House by Representative Gates is very different than the bill that made it all the way through Senate Education Committee. The two bills were pretty different from start to finish. And I say that also, it's important to note that HB 2554 was sent to the Senate with over 87 co-sponsors. That's almost 2/3 of the House. And it made it out of Senate Education and almost voted on by the Senate. That being said, this bill is 9 lives. It's going to come back next session. And if Representative Gates doesn't file it or a version of it, another lawmaker will. And the reason why I bring this up is that I think it's important for us as an organization to look at the impetus behind this bill and the number of co-sponsors and what this bill was seeking to achieve. Because heading into next session, unless we are able to make a case to shape what this looks like, we'll still be on defense as opposed to offense. I much prefer being on the offensive team with the Texas lawmakers than defense. It's a lot easier. So I think we need to take a look at what this bill was trying to do and see if there's a way to come up with something that's very consistent with Perkins 5, that has nothing that even sounds like the word vocational in it, but that provides more options for students without devaluing the level of expectation that we currently have of our high school graduates. So the next one, HB 1032, same thing, made it out of Senate Ed, almost got heard in the Senate chamber. And so the way the bill was drafted would allow our weighted funds, the CTE allotment, to reimburse private employers for intern payroll. Now, number one, payroll dollars to supplement, taxpayer dollars to supplement payroll, that's the Paycheck Protection Program. Typically, we don't do that at the state level. And so really it didn't pass a sniff test. And so when I looked a little further into the Skills Development Fund, which I thought would be a better source of money for this, I noticed that payroll is not an allowable expense of the Skills Development Fund, which is really a state set aside to upskill and teach new skills. Same thing, but really it's targeted for employers that have special needs. Like we're building a Tesla factory. We've got a bunch of people we've got to teach advanced manufacturing skills to, right? And operational logistics. And so that's the kind of thing that Skills Workforce Development Fund is set up to do. And so if we can change that statute and make those funds allowable for this expense, if that passes the sniff test, that's probably a better way to get at this than using the CTE allotment, because the bill had really no safety rails to prevent fraud or brother-in-law deals. You know, who gets this money? Which students benefit? Which employers benefit? Are we going to target certain industries? Are we not? I mean, there was just nothing in there that really would have provided some fidelity to this program. But since it was introduced not only in the 86th legislature, but also the 87th, we think it'll make a comeback again in the 88th. And there concludes the most strange, unusual, irregular legislative session I've seen in a long time. And I say the legislative session is strange. It gets stranger every time. And this one really just set a new bar for odd. So, and we'll be happy to take any questions too.
Robin, you want to go through the other updates and then we'll just open everything up? We sent out today on CTAT Connect the TEA puts out this newsletter, and if you're not receiving this newsletter, then you need to go on the listserv and get signed up for it because it's important stuff most of the time. But there were three big updates. Of course, the state CTE leadership committee application, and several of you that are on the Zoom here today are on this committee. But this committee was put together to be an important committee. I remember we talked to Ryan before they even started with it, and I'm gonna give Ryan credit for the idea because he was there when it started. But anyway, it was really this committee is really intended to hear out what TEA plans for and their goals and their strategies to meet the goals. And I know that it was meant to really just make sure that TEA was aligned with the districts. And so the best intentions were there. And as far as I know, it's operating in that way. You guys that are on that committee may not, I don't know. This should be one of the most important committees that we have. But you can go onto that website and fill out that Qualtrics form and apply to be on that state CTE leadership committee. Also, TEA put out that there is an update to the 2021 Perkins 5 Local Needs Assessment Guidebook. And of course, that's on the CTE website at TEA. And just hit that landing page and click on that, and you can see the new assessment guidebook. And of course, you completed one for 1920, and so 2021 most of your exam, but you'll need all that great information for the 21-22 school year. A new JET grant is out, and those are the Jobs and Education for Texas, and that's through the Texas Workforce Commission. That is a request for application, and it's on their websites now. And of course, if you want more information about that, you can email rfagrants@twc Texas Workforce Commission.texas.gov. A lot of you have really gotten a JET grant, and I've been to schools all throughout the year where you guys have received this, and it's just incredible the equipment and the programs that you can start with the JET grant. JET grants are good deals. Look into them. There's how on that website from TEA, that's where you can actually subscribe to the Career Tech newsletter. And of course, we have this on here every time. But if you're not a member of that newsletter, get on there. And I also recommend that you guys subscribe to the administrator address, because that goes directly to your superintendent, and that way you get to see what your superintendent sees as it relates to CTE and everything else as far as that goes. CTE programming, again, Lindsay is working on right now, putting together the registration and the promotional packet for the 2021-2022 Next Gen administrators. The Next Gen administrators have been phenomenally successful. It was such a fantastic group. We're going to be hosting a reception for the Next Gen administrators at conference. But anyway, make sure that if you hire a new coordinator or a new specialist, or still if you're less than 3 years, that's our target group, is administrators with less than 3 years experience, or specialists and coordinators that work in a district where they get to see the broad picture. So make sure that you sign up for that. New Teacher Academy, our plan is right now for that to be live, and we're waiting to, before we put out promotional materials, probably we'll have the first one in August. We just don't know where yet, because we're waiting to see where the other teacher training is going to be that TEA is putting on, so we can benefit the most people that maybe don't have access to other CTE teacher training. The COVID roundtables, the instruction roundtables, and of course our S21 conference, our summer conference, still not too late to register. That's one of those B square or be there, B squares. And of course, we still do district program evaluation. We've done about 20 or so this year. And so if you think you may be wanting a district program evaluation, as you're filling out your Perkins grant this summer, make sure that you put, I wouldn't put more than $5,000, but you can spend $5,000 without an amendment. So go ahead and put $5,000 in that category, and $6,200 for contracted services, if you think you might be contemplating a district program evaluation. Don't forget the CTE YouTube channel. Go on there and subscribe and hit that bell. And every time we post a video, it'll come up. And of course, this will be on the video as well, or this will be on the channel as well. Again, we just mentioned before the Summer 21 conference. Make sure that you go on there. You can do in person or virtual. I recommend that if you think you might be there in person, do in person, because if you sign up for in person, You get that option, plus you get access to all the virtual content as well. But you can pick either one, whichever fits your needs. Also, for those of you with law and public service programs, the Law and Public Service Conference, which we normally hold in June, we're going to hold in July this year for a ton of reasons that are beneficial to the entire conference. But that'll be at the same time as the CTAT Summer 21 Conference. We'll be hosting the CTAT Law and Public Service Conference. So go ahead and get your law teacher signed up for that. And so I'm going to exit now and stop sharing and go back into gallery view so you guys can kind of take over the discussion. Anyone have any questions for Robin about the legislative update?
Well, I can tell you, even though they only met for 140 days, I probably have at least that many new gray hairs.
Did you say that you'll send out the list of what is designated a tier 1, 2, and 3?
Andrea, there is a tentative list out there that TEA put together. What was it, Robin, about 2 months ago now? But there's a tentative list. We have just been hesitant to put it out because it was incorrect. It had some incorrect information on it. If you just want it just to browse, shoot me an email and I'll send it to you. But it's if it's in a program of study level 1 and level 2, it's tier 2. If it's level 3, level 4, it's going to be tier 3. If it's not in a program of study, it's tier 1.
And I can probably figure that one out on my own. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, their list, it wasn't something nefarious or anything on the list they put out. It was just, you could tell that when they copied and pasted from the CO22 table, that there were a few innovative courses that got thrown in there that were not CDE. So I can put out enough wrong stuff on my own. I don't need help.
So good afternoon, Robin. This is Richard in Dallas. So a question for you about the vocational diploma. First of all, I'm very bothered by the title, and I hope that as an association that we counterbalance that. But do you know what the intent of that is? Because kids are having to earn an endorsement. We're pushing programs of study. So what is the intent of having a designated diploma?
Well, if I understand the author's intent, and again, the bill changed significantly. So as filed, it was really kind of a disaster, in my opinion. And we heard from many of you that felt the same way. So as filed, it would have only required 12 credits to graduate. Only juniors and seniors could be accepted into the program, which of course throws out the window all the prerequisites, or you start over. Just the bill had just a lot of issues. It required really, there was very little chance you could use your existing facilities. It would have required 2 school districts to have trustees come together to establish another school district, basically setting up a charter district. So the final version of the bill, that was all cleaned up. And so you're right. The name of the bill, one of the things I pointed out in public testimony, one of the first things I said was that nowhere in Perkins 5 is CTE defined as vocational. That is a term we haven't used in 30 years. You know, using that kind of language really takes us back. The whole perception of CTE as being college and career ready for all students, multiple entrance and exit points. This is not reflective of current CTE programs. And so we were very clear with lawmakers that we were not happy with the bill as it was filed. So as it kept the name as it made it through. Now, the version that passed in the Senate would have required 24 credits to graduate, even though we know they can get out of school 19 now, 24 credits to graduate. And it prescribes some really strange, like half credit courses, and of course, fine arts, because if you don't include fine arts, the bill's gonna die, period, just so we know. But there were some strange half credit courses in there. But really the intent, Richard, based on the bill analysis, was to give students more time to focus on skilled trades in particular. That was the point. It was, we need to give them more time in the welding bay. We need to give them more time to practice their construction skills. We need to give them more time for auto body, auto mechanics, aircraft mechanics. And I think the author's understanding of CTE is that students could get a level 1 or level 2 certificate while in high school. But the way the final bill was, even though it didn't pass, it was better than it was filed. Increased the number of credits, focused on pretty significant advising strategy so students would understand what they would be giving up if they choose this path. We're still not happy with that kind of language. I think if we can figure out a way to make sure that the linkage is more like P-TECH, we can you know, change graduation requirements. If there's a way, sorry, of course, someone arrives, the dog barks. But
Robin, I think you muted. There you go.
yes, I did. It's my mother. It's not the present man. It's not Amazon. So yes, anyway. But then, okay, so I lost my train of thought. If there's a way to tie this idea into a diploma that actually is a level 1, level 2 certificate or more dual credit, something that spans that P-TECH chasm, I think it would be a little bit better, more tolerable than just, let's just reduce the graduation requirements. You don't have to take fourth English, fourth math, fourth science, fourth history. That's basically what the bill ended up being, was this is vocational. You can drop your 4x4 and go this route. So I think we definitely need to consider it, but I'm not saying that we need to support it the way that it went to the Senate. I think the bill could be better, but I just want you guys to know it's probably going to come back because it had so many co-sponsors.
Great question, Richard. Who else has, everybody did all the legislative updates? Now's the best time. David, y'all were piddling around with some numbers yesterday. Did you have anything that you can share with the group?
No, we, you know, we're trying to figure out how much we're going to gain or lose. And, you know, we took that spreadsheet and we totaled it up and it's about $101 million in the positive. So the bill itself is actually, it's $101 million increase for CTE across the state. For us, we're, you know, I think according to Casey and Moak, we're going to lose about $40,000, but we're running our numbers now for next year because we already got our numbers in. So we're working on that now to try to figure out where we are. But, you know, we found some strange things on that spreadsheet. So I'm not 100% sure that that thing is accurate because we found a few squirrely things on there. But so I don't know if I trust the numbers. So, but, you know, we'll find out. We'll run our numbers. I know for you guys that are using EduThings that they're running a program right now for it to try to put that in their program so that everybody will have accurate numbers. But you know, it is what it is. My concern, I'll say this, Robin, is my question is, you know, we saw bills, just some crazy stuff being filed. And the thing about the vocational pathway, you know, they're using that language because that's what it was called when they were in school, probably. You know, that's what it was called when I was in school. I was on a vocational pathway, you know, so these are older people that are filing bills and they don't even know the language. And, you know, we spend a lot of time talking to our legislators in our district but our, you know, our legislators aren't doing anything. So, you know, they're not filing anything, but the stuff that's being filed, I'm wondering where's this stuff coming from, you know, and how can we as an organization be more proactive, you know, to talk to our legislators. And because some of that stuff that was filed, it's like, who are they talking to? You know, why aren't they talking to CTE people if they're going to file something that has to do with CTE? Why aren't they coming to CTAT and saying, hey, you know, I don't understand where it's coming from. So talking about trying to be more proactive, you know.
So to answer your question, David, the representative that filed this bill has been invited to see multiple CTE programs, has yet to take up the invitation. and it is one individual.
Yeah.
And you're right, it completely out of touch. Not really wanting to collaborate necessarily. So we were fortunate enough to stop the bill. So that gives us some room to negotiate.
Well,
But if he doesn't bring it back
I'd
next
like to
session,
say
I think
to
somebody else will.
all the regions out there, you know, please invite your legislators to your region meetings. And we do that, and, you know, just to talk to them, because I think we're going to continue to see crazy stuff being filed, and it's a political game. You know, they're over there going, "Hey, you vote for my bill and I'll vote for yours," you know. And so we see this stuff passing because it's political, and they're going to do some damaging things to CT. So I'm, you know, all I could say is y'all talk to your legislators, because it's getting crazy out there. It's getting scary. We've never seen this kind of crazy stuff in the 25 years I've been in it. I hadn't seen this kind of crazy stuff coming through. You know. Anyway.
David sounds like one of our phone conversations, doesn't he, Robin?
I want to go back to something David mentioned when he talked about looking at, there were some things that maybe didn't align in that Moak and Casey when you're looking at your numbers. What I've been telling my districts is they've been looking at that and seeing, are they up, are they down? To remember, that was based on 2019. There were a lot of you that put very different course IDs in for this year. Some of that had to do with COVID. You had to switch some things up because of what you were offering virtually versus face-to-face and some of that. But also because of the last legislative session, where those high school courses that could count in, you could get credit for them, weighted funding if they were in middle school. And so there were a lot of you that added a whole lot of those level 1 courses. And so if you ran it based on this year's numbers compared to last year's numbers, there could be some significant differences in what it looked like for you based on what was on that spreadsheet that went, or that PDF that went around.
Thanks, Lisa. That's for sure right. Yeah, it's for sure going to look different, but my guess is you guys will figure out how to make those numbers increase instead of decrease. And David, when we were talking on the phone the other day, he found a district, and I won't say who it was, but they had 0% of advanced level 3 and level 4 courses, and that spreadsheet said their allotment went up. So we know that there's some anomalies in there. So, but I think the best thing Moak and Casey did was kind of give everybody a general idea of what was happening. Miss Lafferty, you had a question that was in the chat box, and would you mind coming on and asking that question specifically? It talks about, does the teacher incentive allotment says it doesn't apply to non-certified teachers, but what about locally certified teachers like Auto Tech and LVN? If you're still sitting there, Miss Lafferty. Did I sum up your question kind of correct?
Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you.
Does anyone know if your district is going to incentivize teachers that you have either maybe put on DOI certification, or maybe that you've used a district permit to certify the teachers? Are they still going to be allowed in your teacher incentive allotment as a certified teacher?
Well, they just changed it to, it says uncertified teachers are now included. That was in that 1565 or whatever. I hate to spread the word with our teachers to say, is that across the board now, all CTE teachers, or is that, what do they mean? What are they accepting as uncertified?
Well, I would hold off until we got future guidance from that Texas incentive, from teacher incentive allotment, because sometimes Robin's really taught me a lot this legislative session. Sometimes those bills pass, but what it sounds like when it passes isn't what it turns out to be. And Robin, you might want to extrapolate on that.
Well, yeah, for example, last session, HB3 said that CTE courses in middle school will draw weighted funding. It didn't say CTE courses for high school credit, but that's how it ended up being implemented. So what I've just put it here in the chat box, and David Reynolds is exactly right. So you've got lawmakers that signed on to this bill. I know several of you on this call probably do. You can see exactly who signed on to this bill. Please call their local office and ask to speak to them about the bill. Ask them why they signed on. Talk to them about the word vocational and about the need to keep the level of expectation and rigor in any diploma, any path that involves CTE, consistent with what other students are expected to do. Can we find ways to provide more opportunities for them to earn credit in CTE? I'm sure we can, without making it a less than path. But look and see if your lawmaker signed on. If that link doesn't work, I'll just die, but hopefully it does.
It worked.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Lafferty. I know that that's kind of a hot topic going into the next school year. Anyone else have any discussion points they'd like to share? Richard, I know you guys have a ton of Paycheck academies there in Dallas. Have you heard anything specific about the grants? I'm assuming it'll be grant about the additional money that Robin was discussing from the feds.
No, but after we implemented the 19 that we opened, that actually is a separate department. So while I collaborate directly with them, we're not directly over the management of the PTECs in the district.
I guess I'm supposed to say lucky you. That's going to be, yeah.
Well, you know, anybody who's done them, because all of those kids are on a 60 credit hour program, it's a lot of detail work to track those kids. So I do feel fortunate that we're not responsible for them and a whole other department takes care of it, because when you add that on top of your regular CTE hat, it's a lot of work. And I don't know about other districts, but we have 36 degree program options under our PTEC umbrella. So just trying to track that is pretty excessive.
Well, I know it's a ton of work and you have to have the staff to handle it, but it sure is beneficial to those students. Anyone else? I know that most of you on here were looking forward to the legislative update, and that was kind of the main topic, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the only topic. So if you have any other question you want to throw out in front of the group, now's the time to do it. If not, then you probably have something to do on your June 3rd Thursday. We will send out an email, but Robin, unless something specifically happens that probably is a hot topic, I'm anticipating that our roundtable will be at conference this year instead of having it the first Thursday in July. Is that a fair assumption?
Absolutely. Our roundtable will be in person in Fort Worth. And so we don't have a virtual option for it since it's roundtable. So the folks in person will be able to attend that. We can probably record it and post it in the virtual platform, but as of today, at least, I don't think we have a way to make it live. If that changes, we will let you know. But let's see. Yeah, once you stop hitting record, anybody that wants the TMZ version of what I just talked about, you can stick around, David.
Well, going once, going twice on information. And like I said, I'm fixing to hit the end record button. But if you have some off the record topics that you want to discuss, those seem to be extremely interesting over the past few months. So feel free to hang around and listen if you want. But I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. Again, thank all of you very much for being here and giving up your first Thursday afternoon. And we'll see you live at conference, and we will not have a meeting at the first Thursday. So hitting end, thank you guys.